What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this past Friday we got my most anticipated game of 2023, and that of course is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And I've played it and I want to talk about it. So without further ado, let's rock. Since you're watching this video, I assume that you know what this game's all about, but for continuity's sake, I will run through the game's info real quick. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is, of course, the sequel to the Switch launch title Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom was released exclusively to the Switch on May 12th. Of course, it was developed and published by Nintendo. And I'm certainly not breaking any new ground when I say that Breath of the Wild is a phenomenal game. I'm super excited because my nephew just got it for Christmas this past Christmas, and he's just getting to the age where he can start playing these types of games, and I'm super excited to kind of pick his brain to see what he thought of it, because I've seen this Reddit thread pop up here and there where the question is like, if you could wipe your brain and play a game for the first time again, what game would it be? And for me, Breath of the Wild might be my answer. The fact that they were able to bring a beloved franchise like The Legend of Zelda in a completely different direction while also bringing it to a brand new console, because I don't know if anybody remembers this or not, but the Switch was basically just a Zelda console for a while. I think it wasn't until like Mario's Odyssey came out like a few months later that anybody played anything other than Breath of the Wild on the Switch. So the fact that they were able to pull this game off while also giving us, in my opinion, one of the greatest games of all time. As much as people talk about Breath of the Wild, I don't think that is discussed enough. However, Breath of the Wild isn't a perfect game, and I know it might sound counterintuitive, but that made me even more excited for Tears of the Kingdom, because as great as Breath of the Wild is, there was still room for improvement in the sequel. And as you probably already guessed, I don't get review copies of video games. However, if you want to help me get to that level where I can start getting review copies, definitely smash that like button and consider subscribing and dinging that bell. Therefore, despite playing this game for every possible second I could after I got off work on Friday, I'm only about 20-ish hours into it. So obviously that this isn't my quote unquote full review. This video is only going to be my first impressions. Besides, this isn't really a game that I would just want to run straight through to get the story over with. Half of the fun with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is getting distracted and kind of exploring. I spent a lot of the first, I would say 5 to 6 hours just building weird stuff using Link's new abilities. Tears of the Kingdom is a blast. It's so much fun to play. It feels like the developers actually watched how people played Breath of the Wild, listened how people talked about that game, and were like, how can we use that and make a better sequel? You liked building weird stuff using Link's abilities in Breath of the Wild? Well, in Tears of the Kingdom, we're gonna give you a brand new ability and a bunch of materials that you can manipulate and build with and just go crazy. Oh, it was annoying that every time you try to climb up a cliff, it would start raining and you would slide down. Okay, we're gonna give you a new ability where you can literally just phase through ceilings. You hated weapon durability? Which, side note, there's still weapon durability in Tears of the Kingdom, which is frustrating. Well, we're gonna give you a brand new ability that helps with weapon durability. And I am having so much fun with the freedom that the new abilities give me. I love that you can solve the problems of the game in so many different ways. For example, my wife was off the Friday that this came out, so she was like 4 or 5 hours ahead of me when I got home. We ate dinner together, then we sat down in the living room and started playing our separate games of Zelda. And at one point, I think we were like 2 or 3 hours into it, she looks over at my screen and she was like, "What the hell are you doing?" I had gotten to a point where I couldn't cross this waterfall. So I was just cutting down trees and making this giant log bridge. And she was like, "What are you doing? You just go up this path and go this other way." And I was like, "No, I'm going with the log bridge," because I was having so much fun building this bridge. And then I ended up having to use that bridge a couple more times. And I wasn't exactly where the game wanted me to be, but I was able to figure it out. And I love that freedom. And like the rest of the internet, I'm just having so much fun building weird shit. The first time that I was able to build a somewhat functioning airplane out of just those random things that you get from the gumball machine, I literally giggled like Ron Swanson. And what I think is really impressive, because Tears of the Kingdom gives you so much freedom, that the game doesn't fall apart when you don't take the correct path. Like I said earlier, I went a goofy way at the beginning and the game didn't fall apart. I didn't get stuck. I didn't have to reload the save. I didn't have to glitch through anything. I was able to figure it out. The game gives you freedom and doesn't fall apart when you actually use that freedom. The first hour of Tears of the Kingdom is basically just story, but once you're kind of released and you can kind of do your own thing, you're up in these sky islands. And I think it's really interesting because as you're up there, you're kind of jumping from the different islands, unlocking new abilities, and you're learning to use these new abilities. I think that the first like couple hours of this game is a really fun tutorial where the environment is kind of your worst enemy. There's not a ton of high-powered enemies up in the Sky Islands. It's basically your biggest obstacle is just getting around, because if you fall, you die. So you really have to learn and hone those new abilities. But eventually you will get back to the ground. And at that point, it feels much more Breath of the Wild. Which I say that in the best way possible, because when you've made a game as good as that game, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel with its sequel. Just give me more of that, plus the new abilities, and I'm good. And unfortunately, we're to the part of the video where we have to talk about how this game looks. And if you've played an open world game on the Switch before, you know that it's not gonna look good. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. If you've played a lot of games on PC or PlayStation 5 or whatever, and then you play this game, compared to those standards, it's gonna look like doo-doo. It basically looks like a PlayStation 3 game. But I think it's kind of unfair to compare a Switch game on basically outdated hardware. It was pretty much outdated when it first came out, to the new consoles. You really kind of have to compare Switch games to Switch games. So let's compare it to the newest Pokemon game, which of course also came out on the Switch, and it was also an open world game. Tears of the Kingdom blows that game out of the water. It looks so much better than that game. So yes, compared to other consoles, it doesn't look that great, but I think it runs really well. I didn't come into any performance issues at all in the 20 hours that I played this game. And I mentioned before on past videos, I'm not really a frames per second guy, so I'd much rather have a game like Tears of the Kingdom that runs consistently on 30 frames per second versus a game on another console that tries to run at 60 frames per second and stutters and glitches and does all that nasty stuff. So I'd much rather have a game that maybe doesn't look as good as those other games, but runs so much better. I mentioned the story briefly earlier, and I know it's weird that I'm waiting this long into this video before I talk about the story, but to be honest, there's a reason for that, and that is I haven't really done a whole lot of stuff with the story. I've basically been building a bunch of stuff, doing shrines, and saving those little assholes that get separated. That's probably 15 of the 20-ish hours that I've played this game is doing all those extra stuff that I just mentioned. I haven't really done a ton of story stuff. That being said, I do think that the story, while it's good in Breath of the Wild, most of, if not all of the biggest moments with that story happen in flashbacks. And what I've really enjoyed so far with Tears of the Kingdom, the little story that I have consumed, it's happening right now, and I definitely appreciate that. But again, I haven't really done a whole lot of story stuff yet. But as always, those are just my thoughts on The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, definitely smash that like button, as the kids say. Consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, ding that bell. That way you get notified every time I post a new video. I post weekly gaming related content, so if you enjoy that type of stuff, definitely consider subscribing and ding that bell. But until next video, take it easy. What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this is my boy Yoshi, aka Kitty Boy, and we were just talking and we agree that since you made it this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. You wouldn't want to disappoint Kitty Boy, would you?